Good afternoon. Hello, I'm so glad to have you here today. This is Business Performance USA, and this is our weekly Tuesday noon webinar. We're so happy to have you here today, and we look forward to hearing from Dr. Jeff Stewart. He's one of our speakers who comes back every 8 weeks or so, and we're glad to have him back to talk about today's topic, which is O cubed excellence, which is operational, organizational, and ownership excellence, boundary conditions for business competitiveness. So, as we think about today's presentation, let me first tell you a little bit about Business Performance USA. We're a voluntary association of executive presenters, and we present every Tuesday at noon Central and provide a variety of business insights on different topics that are important to businesses. We keep up with the trends and we bring back speakers week after week who are experts in their field. And Dr. Jeff Stewart today is one of our experts in terms of competitiveness. In fact, when we introduce him, you'll hear more about that. Let me go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Cynthia Stewart. I'm your host today, and I'm managing partner for Evermore Services, LLC. And we have your presenter, as I've said, is Dr. Jeff Stewart. He's first speaker and board for the CXO suite. He's a board agent. And, today, as you watch this, what I'd like to do is to invite you to participate by sending me questions. I'll be monitoring the question box, the question feature, and all you need to do is type in your questions, and I'll be watching for those. We can get those to Dr. Stewart as the time is appropriate. Please let you know that you can reach me anytime, or even Dr. Jeff anytime at Cynthia at businessperformanceusa.org or Dr. Jeff, businessperformanceusa.org. Either one of us can send us any questions, and either Jeff or myself will, or any of our panel of experts will be happy to answer those questions if we can't do that today. So one more thing, I want to make sure that you do know that today we are recording, and you can always come back to businessperformanceusa.org, become a member, and at any time watch any of the webinars that we have, over 60 now, that we have recorded week over week, and you can pull those down. You can also go to YouTube. Check us out on youtube.com at user bpusa.org, bpusa.org. Also, we do have business performance on cravingtalkradio.com. So many ways that you can reach out to us. Okay, with that, what I'd like to do is go ahead and introduce Dr. Stewart. I was looking to see if we were up for the next slide. There we go. Okay, Dr. Stewart is, as we have said, the really the expert in competitiveness. He is an agent for the Board of Trustees, Board of Directors, and C-suite teams, and he's first speaker, and his company is JAS LLC. He's been serving Fortune 10, 100, and 1,000 firms for more than 30 years by focusing top leaders on critical dimensions of core intellectual properties and on timing rapid market entries for emerging businesses. His career to date in terms of economic value creation is in the range of 14 figures. He's helped make many millionaires in his time, and he loves to support people, and he loves to help people and train them up and help them learn more about business and about competitiveness. In fact, he was asked to be the chairman and is now chairman emeritus for the National Advisory Council of the American Society for Competitiveness. He served for over 15 years as an ordained elder in his faith community and also as a loyal Eagle of the Boy Scouts of America. Okay, with that, what I'd like to do is turn this over to Dr. Jeff. I know you can't wait to hear what he has to say about competitiveness. With that, Jeff, what I'm going to do is go ahead and share my screen with you. And if you're on mute, go ahead and unmute. So I'm sharing my screen now. I'll let you know when we see your screen. Okay, we see your screen and see that beautiful mount. We should ask you, Jeff, just so we know that you're not on mute, what is that mountain?
That is the north face of El Capitan in Yosemite, and it was a favorite climbing ambition during my 20s.
So, Jeff, I think you answered, but I didn't hear you well. So let's make sure you're not on mute. El Capitan, he said. You might check your GoToMeeting icon down on the bottom and go ahead and set off that mute button, because I believe that's...
What mute button?
We have the GoToMeeting. There's let me see if I can unmute you by chance.
I am unmuted on my side.
Okay, and we are not hearing you through the microphone. Let me go on mute for one moment and see if we can hear you better, Jeff.
Can you hear me now? It shows me as talking.
Okay, it's not.
Can you hear me now? It shows me as unmuted.
I think it's on my end. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, I don't have the screen, by the way. I don't have your screen.
Right, we are seeing your screen. We just need your presentation.
Oh.
Big sigh. There we go.
Hello.
I'm seeing your screen.
You got it?
We got it. Thank you.
Alrighty. Sorry about the difficulty, folks. I thought it was going to be run from the other side, so I had not had it up in background and waiting. The main thing today is to talk about how we deal with boundary conditions. You know, it's always interesting inside cultures, and as a side note, of course, we assume that culture trumps strategy in business. So it's always interesting in cultures to deal with boundaries. If you go from one division of an organization to another, one area of a market coverage to another, one aspect of research into another, one division of improvement into another, one new idea or invention into somebody else's realm of invention and ideas, there are always boundary conditions to consider. So I thought I would go ahead and begin with the overview because it depicts all kinds of boundary conditions. I don't intend to walk through this in detail except to remind you that we always begin in the large cycle of events on a highly competitive and durably constructive business with what is observable. We may have ideas, but without ideas that we can get a grip on reality with, the technical term is a concept, we don't even know what it is we're observing. That is to say, we can't compute it, we can't calculate it, we can't rationalize it, we can't even intelligently deal with our passions and our emotional reactions to it. So we can certainly act, but we will be just like billiard balls on a table without some sense of control and expertise in the force of action, what we sometimes call the management forcing function. We won't be able to make sense of the things that we see going on or sense going on around us. So we do need to understand that we begin with observables, things that are in essence tangible in one way or another, or that we can induce the tangibility of because of a secondary effect in our own learning and sensing and so forth and so on. The technical word is epistemology, our ability to track and trace and study the track and trace of our events as we sense and learn in the world around us. So we begin with observables, and we move in a high arc through ideas, and the ideas which tend to get lifted up also have on the balance of ambiguity in our lives, you notice that in the middle with the red and the green arrows, a tendency to push the concepts down into reality, that is, to get a grip on the world around us. So our ideas become attached to the things we observe. And we begin from there by generating commitment and support for what we observe, and working that commitment and tightening the focus of that support so that we can move through various forms of change. Basically, there are three kinds, and we can talk about change management, change execution, and change leadership. If we understand that leadership happens at the same time as execution and as management, then we begin to understand why these things get fairly complicated. Indeed, it's the excellence of our ability to position and to sustain a strategic position in our business that allows us to make the most of our opportunity and create competitive advantage. Now, I'm going to move deeper into competitive advantage and the boundaries there in just a moment, but I want to complete the cycle here so that you understand what we go through when we take a business from, oh, next to nothing into, my golly, something else indeed. So when we achieve competitive advantage, we still have a lot of things to do. So we have scaled our opportunity somewhat. We began by scoping it, of course, and then begin by scaling it with competitive advantage. And now we want to find partners so that we can reach into the world around us and the specific markets that we target, and to get to the people who understand and want to do what we offer them to do. Purchase our mix of products and services is the usual transaction-oriented statement of the economics involved, so I'll just stay with that. When we look with an open eye to our reach into the world, we are looking for compatibility, whether it's a customer, that is a transactional relationship, or a client, which is a standing relationship, oftentimes guaranteed by some form of agreement that keeps the switching cost high on both sides, so that no matter what goes on in the dynamics of daily activity in a business, or the daily rounds of life, our decision to stay put and to stay strong and to hold each other accountable and so forth and so on is written into the activity of the organization and the culture itself. This is part of the charter of our lives, the charter of our business stream. So compatibility becomes important. Now, we do test, and we do things in simple ways as much as we can, but that doesn't mean that there are no complexities. Because we are experience driven in the market, that is to say, the learning curve in the market is driven by our experience with customers and theirs with ours, we absolutely have to refine our compatibility and move in the direction of doing a better job, and that's where the observable round begins all over again. So it really begins with innovation or improvement, picks up on our opportunities all over again, heads us into projects which help us refine where I began before, that pull of ideas down into the world of commerce, industry, and overall economic value creation. So with that said, I'm going to dive deeper in this conversation into the world of competitive advantage. As a quick review, let me point out that here are boundary conditions inside that big cycle that I talked about, and they have to do with aspects of our market and aspects of where we get a return on our investment and on our resources. I'm fond of saying that the first and most important thing that we do is focus on people because they are the culture, they are the business organization, as long as the processes they're using are helping them perform up to snuff, up to expectation, and perhaps exceed it as we go on. If that's true, then it doesn't matter whether you're outside the organizational culture or you're inside. It does matter what you look at in terms of your financials and your commercial feasibility. So financial feasibility on the one hand and commercial feasibility on the other are tied together. Financing, as you know, is the ability to take a fine point about the business and leverage it to get a leg up on what you intend to do with regard to fiscal resources and their application in the long or strategic term. So financial feasibility often begins with looking at cost. We do a cost build, and from there we look at what our expected margins need to be and our share across the commercial reach of our business, including the scaling and the growth of that business in the market or the experience curve. Now, given that point of view, then people on the outside and the inside increasingly want to know, where do we generate our value? So we say that we generate them in four basic ways, and that 70% of our opportunity, our baseline opportunity, is tied up in what we call the core and the expanded core of business outcomes. Now, if things are going well in that context, you'll see up in the red ellipse in the corner, it's an ellipse, by the way, not a circle, because there's always at least two centers involved. There is the center of the provider and the center of the acquirer. So it's an elliptical shape, not a circle. The new leading edge is when we really desire to take advantage of the life cycles that we have in the market and make some revolutionary advance. We're willing to take a higher risk and move a lower return on investment in the beginning to a higher return on the investment as quickly as we can, because in the end that will give us the financial feasibility to look at incoming changes of the highest order. These are changes when we take on an entire industry segment or take responsibility through trade associations for setting standards and practices in an industry. And these are incoming big changes, we call them. By extending the enterprise business, we really show our love for what we do. We take our commitment to inspiring and inventing and bringing ideas down into conceptual reality so that they can be turned into products and services that affect us all very, very seriously. Now, it is high risk, and so we expect a very high return on investment over a strategic view when we take on something in that dimension. Extended enterprise, of course, is the key to most of the distribution systems and logistics that we enjoy in the so-called developed world today, but it is also one of the greatest and highest risk areas. So typically, we need to realize that 70% of our revenue is baseline. It's from the core of what we do best. We drive our business and lead from our baseline. We evolve improvements. This is relatively low risk with a high predictable return on investment. And we expand that core of opportunity by learning and experiencing what the customer and the client and indeed the market is willing to allow us to take through business process breakthroughs. The idea that you can be adaptive in little ways and make big differences is the key to expanded core of business. It's low risk, and in the beginning it seems like it's low return, but if you remain adaptive and second order in your problem solving as a business person, you will achieve a high return on investment everywhere you focus. So it's key to understand that the resilience of any economic value model is located in core and expanded core, and its growth is primarily that 20% of opportunity represented by new leading edges, where you and your customers, clients, and partners in industry understand that life cycles are not just about the value of the monetary consideration, but they're also about the intensification of human capital and its long-term commitment and support of the system generating economic value. So with that said, I'm going to quickly move on to the next slide because I need to say a couple of quick things about cycles of learning. First of all, when we learn in the marketplace, it was noticed way back in the 1950s that, by Boston Consulting Group, I may add, kind of fortuitously, that there was a correlation between your ability to show a return and your ability to invest. So we all knew that the investment in the beginning would always seem high when it came to short term, and in the end we would make up the cost of that investment at some point, and we would start to see a commercial feasibility, that is to say a return from the point of view of total revenues that more than offset our demand. The only real question we had was what was an acceptable rate of learning? You know, how much capacity did we have to have in order to extend our capability and to reach our market? So the idea was that fast growth companies in the end of the 50s were noted as those that operated on approximately a 40% learning curve. They were highly competitive and durably constructive. Now, at that point, we didn't really understand much about learning, so that was seen as doctrine for quite a while until the leading edge semiconductor and electronics firms on a global scale began to acquire mountains and mountains of big data that allowed them to understand the rate of business that they could assume before it began to become forgettable on the one hand, or unsustainable under any circumstances on the other. As time passed, by the early 1970s, those world leaders in what we would today call technology firms began to understand that if you had a learning curve in the market that was less than 20%, that is, if you were only successful in appreciating what was going on 1 out of 5 times, your business was unsustainable and forgettable. On the other hand, if it got to the point where your learning curve was so steep and so fast that you achieved 60%, it became unsustainable even with very, very deep financial pockets, primarily because it would drag everybody's costs up so fast that no one else could assume the burden. So in essence, we say that the 40% learning curve is rooted in market experience and that that's tied to real learning that you can manage and control from the point of view of execution in your own business. There are a lot of uncontrollables, but if you stay around that 40% and an organizational learning curve, both inside and outside with your customers and clients, then you can learn predictably, grow rapidly, and sustain that growth durably over the term. Let me go to the next slide and give you a sense of how that looks as a graph. Basically, what we're saying is keep your range of competitiveness in line with which phase you are in your development as a market. So if you notice I've broken a sort of range of competitiveness up into 3 segments over that green line, which is the 40% learning curve. And that's basically to denote what I call in the upper left-hand corner the scoping curve, and the second one would be the scaling curve, how you test and understand what it means for you to scale effectively and to respond to the dynamics of demand in marketplace. And finally, the reach curve, the third segment, which is how you get out into an extended enterprise. So I wanted to make sure that all these graphs started to play into the 40% learning curve, and you see that that stays pretty focused over time. No one's really wanting to go too far out toward being forgettable or too far out toward being unsustainable. What we really want to do is maintain massive focus and add more lines of predictable revenue, diversifying our risk and expanding our range of competitiveness under control of execution. So let me move now to the next slide so that you understand that cycles of learning really play into cultural excellence. In any business, there are three major loops that we have to deal with. Now, there's one or another kind of language for this, but what I want to do is note that in the beginning I said that there was three kinds of change, and change is what we're about in business. I don't mean small change. I mean executing small changes that make for major changes in the market that cause value to be generated for all players on all sides. So if you talk about change in that way, you remember I said there was change management, change execution, and change leadership. And I also indicated that change execution is, in the last slide, change execution is where we have our most controllable elements. So by focusing in change on execution, we're in the sweet spot of any business organization or culture. And the ability to show value going to market and the commitment to improving that value as we go forward through change management is something that allows us to claim change leadership in the market and to encourage and nurture the loyalty of our clients, customers, and partners. So in general then, if we look at that, change execution is a function of both design or intent and development. That is how you expand the envelope and play out the manifold of reasonable opportunities that are available to you when you want to go to market. So on the make market loop, we have the make aspect. You'll notice in today's literature out there a strong emphasis on the makers because we've had a whole lot of marketing going on and not a whole lot of profit being made for a while. We've been sort of stunted as we've shifted our generational models on the one hand, and on the other hand, fearful people have stunted the market because they're afraid it'll move too fast and they won't be able to control their ability to tax it or to draw excess revenues into places where many of us would prefer they didn't have that opportunity. Sorry about the editorial comment. But change leadership always steps out in front with a candid statement or two, and I want you to note that that change leadership position is one that is recorded in my mind from many, many interviews in the last several years, not simply just the decades of my experience in industry. So make market loop is a big deal. We spend a lot of time these days trying to re-educate our marketplace for making things happen, for making good decisions, for making good products, for making sure that customer service is approaching the highest possible sustainable level and everybody is a happy camper. What we tend to forget is that improvement is not just about learning in the marketplace. Our intention has to reach across to our ability to discover and qualify what can be changed, what can be made new. And in that process, we move into the area of discovery and innovation. That is a huge loop in business, but it is a loop that most people don't understand well because, you tend to look at it in terms of the enterprise life rather than the life value that you're bringing to the enterprise. So, for example, some people talk about the discovery innovation loop as just being strategic rather than cultural, and as a result, they overweight the value of upstarts and new product. On the other hand, some people look at it from the point of view of adversity and only wanting to fix or replace things that are worn out or broken. And the result is that that stunts discovery and keeps it too narrowly focused and not open to the opportunity for making step function improvements even while you focus on making the incremental improvements in one area or another inside your business relationships. So with all of that said, let me indicate that there are boundary conditions involved. You notice I've put that subtitle in a smaller case because it's a smaller case and a more focused case. I've also put it in green so that you can see that it correlates to that trefoil and its sort of central overlap in this diagram. In order to really get control of execution, in order to really be able to discover what can be replaced for good improvement in market value, you really have to understand that you get the focus through these areas of overlap between design and development, between leadership, execution, and management. And now that sounds like a whole lot of words to say something that we've known for a couple of 300 years. But on the other hand, it's a whole lot of words that have been accrued to refine and make a difference about the different layers of understanding that we have come to apply in a comprehensive manner to the world of business and its outcomes and the value to economic structures on the whole. So focus on the green trefoil with me, and we're going to move forward. Oops, there we go. Last time I talked about the triangles of economic value creation, and I talked about them from the point of view of the go-to-market line, the innovation line, and the invention line. And I'm not going to go repeat that presentation, but what I am going to point out is that if you look carefully at that trefoil in the middle, it is another triangle. First of all, there is an internal triangle that focuses downward into our ability to inspire and invent a new direction or a new pulse or a new thrust or a new driver for the business. And on the other hand, the platform for that is always in the make market side. So when I said we're putting a lot of emphasis today on re-educating the make side so that the market side has something of value to bring to everybody, I didn't mean to suggest that I was overemphasizing or that we are. I was trying to point out that we're finally getting back to basics so that the intent that we have to develop the value of our business and our resources and to make a difference that's of value to everybody in the market is actually grounded in the reality of our experience. So if you were to draw a parallel line to the base of this triangle across the two upper parts of that green trefoil, that would be the platform for your make market. Now, similarly, you could draw triangular lines across on the design development loop and the discovery innovation, and you would see that there are implied triangles of activity. But the most important, we typically unitize those in divisional parts of a business and add leadership and management and execution expertise to those elements to create ongoing organizational subcultures that allow us to interact in that green space, which is where what we sometimes refer to as board level and CXO level activity occurs. The board level would be the inner triangle, and the trefoil would be itself would be the CXO suite. So let me move on now and not go into that too much in detail, except to say that remember this is a triangle, and for those of you who do things like decision support systems, you'll understand that triangles imply a certain metric that is a trigonometric, and that can be applied in decision science for all kinds of modeling of experience curves in the marketplace. So let me move then, without going into any more detail, into a depiction of the various aspects of creating focus, because obviously focus is what's going to be fundamental to our platform in the market. If we're unfocused, then we can't get the results we want with maximum intensity, maximum sustainable intensity, and we certainly won't be able to get the adherence we want and achieve a solid and a lasting value in the market. This is represented in this case by looking at bell curves. Notice that the red curve in the middle is a normal standard distribution. That would be on the somewhere between the 20% and the 40% learning curves. The yellow curve in this case would be a 20% learning curve. That would be your lower limit. And On the green curve here, you're seeing an improvement, except for one thing. You're tending to lag backwards into the left-hand side of the distribution. There is a tendency to become entrenched in the ways of doing things. Sometimes folks in industry call that the not invented here syndrome. And the problem is that unless you're very, very good at averaging your learning curves and your distributions of experience, you won't be able to survive long. You'll end up making zippers in a Velcro world. Now, the ideal world of the 40% learning curve would be represented in this case by the blue distribution. That is to say, it's highly focused. All of the, or a majority of the players in your marketplace, you own the market share, are under that highly focused curve, and execution becomes critical for everybody. So let me move on and show you what that implies, though, about the economic value and about boundaries. Because you see, what you want to do to grow really, really fast is establish that blue spike of opportunity in your business as something that your company is leading the change on in the marketplace. And the platform for that, obviously, is your marketplace experience. So you move off of your norm distribution and you begin to pull in the wings of your activity in and around the spike of your best performing product and service mix, and you begin to achieve high value that way. So let me move on quickly to the next slide. I hope. Oops, wrong direction. And I want to come back now to the final slide. This slide really says that a culture of collaboration is the rock-solid foundation on which to build a culture of competitiveness. Excuse me. Let me say that one more time. A culture of collaboration is the rock-solid foundation on which to build a culture of competitiveness. The platform in the make market is the basis for being able to have an organizational culture that is highly competitive and durable and will trump any strategy, including your own. And that's, of course, a winning and a losing solution if you're not careful. It's a double-edged sword, as we say. Collaboration and competitiveness work together to create lasting economic value. What the heck is lasting economic value? Well, the short word for it is wealth, although that word has been bandied about politically so much that we have almost no way of making sense of it socially except to redeem it. And the way to redeem it is to work together. That is to say, to build trust in an environment where working together and competing to some degree internally in constructive ways and externally in even more constructive ways than we might internally, to foster engagement and accountability. Engagement and accountability are enormous terms these days. People wonder what it means to be engaged. Well, basically, it means to know what's at risk, to be committed to the contest that you're entering, and to play fair and square with the other component parts of that contest. There are lots of social and economic and other rules that surround our issues when we enter into a competitive environment. We cannot go blindsided into that. We have to go with a broad view and a focused view simultaneously of the social covenant, not too different from the one I showed you with the distributions in the prior slides. So that leads us to accountability. On the human side, we have to know who we're dealing with. We have to understand the results we're going to get, how reliable they are, and whatever we can do to help each other improve that reliability and to repeat the success that we achieve and improve at the same time as we go forward. Cultures of accountability, therefore, begin in our willingness to check things out, not only in the immediate present, in the foreground of our activity, but to understand the humanity and the progress and growth and learning that we bring to the background that we have brought forward. The experience value of the human in a business organization is now underrated and unfortunately under attack in today's market. And what we really need to do is to turn our tactics outward into the marketplace so that we bring better value and we revalue, in fact, transvalue the human inside the organization so it leads the way as a purpose for doing all business on a global scale. Anyway, that's my opinion. What we want to do is to create cultural excellence positioning and in the end, total business competitiveness for any company in any industry. And who is we in that sense? We is the human. It is the human engaged in the world for which they accept responsibility and are willing to stand watch over, cleaning up the messes as we go and encouraging the improvement of a more civil society. And in that regard, then, I would like to turn this over to Cynthia one more time.
Okay, Jeff, so let me take over the screen.
Okay.
And
let me get this up here.
Okay, so now we have my screen up. That's a lot to take in, Jeff. I know that you've brought together in these graphs much of your experience and understanding, and we appreciate that. Thank you. I was hearing an echo, and that went away. Thank you, whoever muted. So, thank you again for giving us so much information. I feel like it's information that we all need to know and understand and put to practice. We hope that you'll continue to come back and teach us on these things. I almost feel like what I'd like to do is just take one graph and really talk about that graph and take it from the view of the graph directly into how we take that and then apply it into our business. So we invite you back, Jeff, so we can talk more about make market, especially those loops, the loops, the excellence loops, as you call them, the make market, discovery, innovation, and design and development. I think those are very interesting. So folks, we want to invite you back next Tuesday. We'll be back with Emily Shoup of Shoup Training and Consulting. And Emily will be talking about creating your culture for 2015. So her focus next week will be on culture. And I know that she's a very popular speaker. We invite you back to come and hear her. She talks often about team conflicts and leadership and culture, how to just create a great place for people to come back every day and do their great work. Then we're going to take a break over the Christmas week, and we'll be back with Milton Corsi, Financial Excellence in 2015. Milton has been talking about leadership, and it's going to be great to hear him on the topic of financial excellence. And then we start our new series in January with Track One's background screening series on screening for volunteers. Nancy has been really working on the culture of accountability, and this is one of many to help build that culture of accountability, something that Jeff also talked about in his presentation today. So folks, come back next week, go out and make it a great day and a great week, and we'll see you on Tuesday of next week for your interest in Create Your Own Culture for 2015. Thanks everyone, and with that I'll be closing down the web.